Alright, it's a good day. Because we got the Wendy's Frosty. And books, too. Trying to make a mess here. Oh! It's so hot where I am. I drove back from the store. It's hot. It's like melted already. Anyways, today I went to the bookstore. Surprise, surprise. But I went just to get books for my thesis. Okay? I had emailed the guy ahead of time. I knew they were there. Just going for that. But while the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak, and I got other books too. Again, no surprise. And so I'll show you those. Well, this is good. And then after I show you those, I'll talk a little bit about what I read this week, and yeah, that'll wrap it up. So first thing we picked up a couple Stevenson. Oh, before I start, I want to point out the fact that I do have some self-control, because there was a bunch of Charles Dickens at the store that I didn't have, and it was fairly priced too, like $6, $7, $8 a piece Canadian, and I put it all back. I thought maybe I'll find it at a different store and save some money, you know? So I don't want to hear anybody in the comments saying that I have no self-control, because I have some. That some might be not very much, but I have some. Anyways, the first ones we picked up were a couple Robert Louis Stevenson, which I was under the impression wrote for kids mostly, and that may still be the case, but this particular story has a provocative title, and that is The Suicide Club, and other stories, okay? However, Suicide Club, that doesn't really seem like it's for kids, but maybe it is, I don't know. And it's got some other ones in there, I don't know, A Lodging for the Night, and A Sire de Malétroit's Door. Interesting. And then we've got The Master of Ballantrae, and it also includes his unfinished work, Weir of Hermiston, which was unfinished, and then published posthumously. So, I mean, Louis Stevenson, famous for Treasure Island. And yeah, I've also got Kidnapped and Catriona by him. So yeah, rounding out my Stevenson quite nicely. I'm forgetting about my Frosty here. Otherwise, I think I made a video about it previously. In the past, I picked up the first book in the Earthsea trilogy by Ursula Le Guin. I've been looking for the second and third books in that trilogy, and today was the day. So I've got The Tombs of Aduan, right? Is that focusing? I cannot tell. There you go, Tombs of Aduan, and then also The Farthest Shore. This one's a bit dirty, but they're both in that sort of same edition. Yeah, nice like early paperback. Cool art on the front. I don't think it's the same binding as my original. These are Bantam. And my first copy is no. It's something else. It's like a black binding. So they don't match, but I'm happy to finish the trilogy. That'll be good. Next up is some Nabokov. So I currently have Lolita and the something of Sebastian Knight. My eyes aren't good. Oh, I can't read that. Oh, The Real Life of Sebastian Knight. My eyes are poor, I suppose. Oh wow. I have to keep eating this during the video, or it's going to be just liquid by the time I finish, so I apologize. We have some Nabokov here. It's a collection. It's called A Russian Beauty and Other Stories. There it is. What else does it have in here? Good question. Let's see if I can find the table of contents with one hand. Oh, there's a lot of stuff in here. I can't list it all. A lot of stuff though, so that looks good. And then the other one I got by him is kind of one of his more famous ones that I feel like a lot of people know it. It's Pale Fire. So It looks like a newer edition, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, a 999 line poem by reclusive genius John Shade. Interesting. I don't really know much about it, to be honest. Yeah. What else do we have? I've been recently trying to collect all of Conrad, and I have quite a bit by him. So I have Chance, Lord Jim, Nigger of the Narcissus, Typhoon, and then other stories it has in there. Secret Agent, Nostromo, Victory, Heart of Darkness and Other Tales, The Shadow Line. And then I also picked up Under Western Eyes. There you are. And then An Outcast of the Islands. That's some cool art on the front of that one. So again, the only Conrad I've read is Heart of Darkness in high school. I remember liking it. But yeah, I just haven't had the time. You know, I have a million things to do and I read other books. But I'll get to it eventually. So I'm rounding out I don't even know how much he wrote. I feel like I have a lot of his stuff, but perhaps he's like very prolific and I only have like 10%. Hard to say. I didn't bother looking it up. But when I see Conrad, I buy it. Then I got an interesting sci-fi book. That being Exogenesis by Peko Gaskowski. Sounds Polish or Russian or something, I don't know. Anyways, the reason I know about this book is because I was subscribed to the guy Pico, I don't know. I was subscribed to him on Substack, and he did some promotional stuff for the book, and I thought, oh, it looks cool, it looks like it would be good, but of course ordering new, I don't really do that, and it's lots of money, so I never thought I'd read it. And I think it's a recent release too, like, what is this, like 2020 something? Let's see if I can find it. So I thought, yeah, I'll probably never end up getting it. Yeah, 2023, right? So like last year. And yet, there it was at the bookstore for $12. So it was the most expensive book of the lot today, but why not, right? So that's interesting, kind of an internet connection. Never thought I'd see it, but there you go. And then lastly, here's the reason that I actually went to the store, is to get these two books. And that's The Educated Imagination by Northrop Frye. So the plan right now is to do my thesis on Frye, mostly in the terms of archetypes, but you know, I should probably read everything he wrote if I want a full picture. And the other one is The Double Vision, Language and Meaning in Religion. So that's kind of a cool marbly cover on there. So yeah, those are the two I went to actually buy. So that's good. Gotta get my melting Frosty here. Alright, now moving on. What did I read this week? I spent a lot of time reading stuff for my thesis because I have like a grant proposal that's due. I didn't read anything like through, just like random snippets and articles and stuff like that. Not really much I can talk about, I guess. And don't worry, in like a year and a bit, you'll probably be hearing a lot about my thesis, and especially as I start to read books for it, you'll kind of get bits and pieces, and I'll make full videos, I think, on those books. So I'm not going to say anything about it now, but you'll get it later. Don't worry. I read this week a few essays out of this book, Milton. Again, it's focusing on my face all the time. I got to cover my face. Now, I didn't read this through. I have no background in English Lit going into my master's degree, so a lot of the essays in here are kind of going over my head. The two I read were, yes, The Crisis of Paradise Lost by E.M.W. Tilliard. Now, I've read Tilliard's The Elizabethan World Picture, which was very, very good. I liked that. And in The Crisis of Paradise Lost, Tilliard is pointing out the fact, I mean, he does more than this, but the main thing I got from it was that he points out the fact that Adam and Eve actually fell before they ate the fruit, at least in Paradise Lost, because in Eve's case, she's being contentious and like disobeys the divine order and natural way things should be by asking Adam to garden alone. And then of course she's flattered by Satan, and the decision to eat the fruit is made in her heart before she actually does it, right? And then for Adam, Eve tells him, she fesses up, And he immediately says, well, then I'm going to die too, obviously, because I'm sticking with you, right? Like, I wouldn't not eat because you ate, right? Like, I got to do it with you. And so he also falls before he actually goes through the act of eating, which is kind of interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. I'm not really sure what the implications are, but good, cool thing to point out. Maybe he mentions it in here, it went over my head. Like I said, I'm not too versed in literary criticism at this point, but yeah. And then the last one was by Joseph Summers that I read, and it's called The Final Vision, and he just kind of talks about the last few books of Paradise Lost. So yeah, it was good. I don't know if there was like any specific takeaway that I had, but good to read that sort of stuff every once in a while. And I am auditing a Milton class in the fall, so maybe that'll come in handy. Who knows? And then the last thing that I want to talk about today is that my book club did Man in the High Castle. So if you know me at all, you know I'm a big fan of Philip Dick. We've done him in my book club before. I'm collecting him, and I've read several of his things. And with my big book stack, fitting a book into it is a high honor. And so Philip Dick receives my high honor. There's the edition I have. Kind of cool. It's a science fiction edition. I have some notes on it because I took notes for, not really notes, but like I made questions for the book club. So we can just talk about a few of the things that I noticed. So one of the themes that I noticed in, well, I mean, it would be hard not to notice, perhaps, was the theme of the I Ching versus the Bible and how their like styles of wisdom differ. Now, if you don't know, Man in the High Castle is a book about, it's a speculative history about what if the Axis powers won World War II. And so America is like completely taken over by the Japanese, and Europe and Asia is taken over by the Germans. And so instead of like having like a white majority Bible believing America, we have whites as like the lower class and Japanese as the ruling class. And so their cultures and the things that they practice are kind of brought in and like become the cultural norm, right? So instead of the Bible, they have what's called the I Ching, which is like a 5,000-year-old book of divination. Divination meaning telling the future. And the way they consult it is with like coins or like these sticks, and like it's random chance, and it like makes a symbol, and then you use that symbol to find in the book what the prophecy is. And if you read the prophecies, this is just my take on it, it's total garbledy-gook. It doesn't mean anything. Like, some says things like, the donkey walks east, the sun rises twice, the prince arrives. It's like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It seems as though the characters are kind of just imposing meaning onto what they're reading. And the only general sense you get actually from the book is whether it's a good or bad omen. Otherwise, the content doesn't really seem to mean anything. But hey, I'm just a stupid Westerner. What do I know, right? Which, if you contrast the I Ching to the Bible, the difference is very stark, right? Because the I Ching, it makes a prophecy into the future, and it's very vague. You have to kind of interpret. There's like, whereas the Bible, if you look at something like Proverbs, it's like very actionable, like practical advice, and it's very intelligible, right? So, I don't know, that was an interesting comparison to me, for me anyways. And then in the book, there is a book called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, which is like the opposite of The Man in the High Castle. So in Philip Dick's fictional universe in the book, a guy named Abdinson has written a book about what if the Allies had won World War II. So it's kind of like a interesting reversal, maybe. And at the end of the book, I don't want to spoil it too much, but at the end of the book, Abdinson reveals the fact that the I Ching actually wrote the book. And he talks about it as if the I Ching is like a person, or like a spirit, or like has consciousness, which I don't really know how to interpret the ending. The ending is very odd. And yeah, my dad gets mad because it seems as though Philip Dick doesn't finish his books. He kind of just leaves you hanging a lot of the time, which is, I don't know, fair enough. It's his style, maybe. But, yeah. And then earlier in the book, it talks about how, like, a spirit can animate a book to make it living, like the Bible or the I Ching. So perhaps Philip Dick is trying to, like, personify that spirit that's animating the text. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Another one of the big things that he talks about in the book is race. And he contrasts very strongly the Americans versus the Japanese versus the Germans. And it seems as though the Germans are like, I mean, I have page excerpts for all these things too. I'm just not reading them. I'll spare you this time. But it seems as though he characterizes the Germans as being like fanatical idealists, and they're not concerned with the reality of situations, only the ideal. And that's what leads them to commit all these atrocities against other people, because they only see the ideal. They don't see real people in front of them, right? And then the Japanese are more practical people. They're like business-oriented, hardworking. But he also characterizes them as very, I don't know what the word is, but they only steal from other cultures. They imitate, they don't create. And there's a line in the book where he says that only like the Anglos or the whites are like actually endowed with creativity, which you can make of that what you will. But yeah, he portrays the Japanese as only taking from cultures. And for example, the I Ching the Japanese use is actually a Chinese book, not Japanese. And then when one of the white characters goes over to their house, they cook him like a steak and potato dinner, and it's excellently cooked, but it's kind of like odd because they're Japanese. Yeah. Anyways, then the last thing in Man in the High Castle, which I think carries potentially the most meaning, is the contrast that Philip Dick makes in the topic of jewelry, which might seem random, but one of the characters in the book quits his job to be a jeweler, and he kind of isn't. He's an American, so he's in the ruled class, right? He's like in the oppressed class, if you want to put it in those terms. He's lower status, let's just say that, and the Japanese love collecting American history, Americana, right? And the contrast that Philip Dick makes between the Americana, the historicity, and like the new innovative American jewelry is very interesting. And at the end of the book, one of the characters like has a mental breakdown, like staring at this like piece of American jewelry because he doesn't quite get it right away. But Philip Dick never spells out what that exactly means either. So he does leave you to fill in a lot of the blanks yourself, which there's pros and cons to that. I mean, it's obviously nice to be told what's going on, but it's also nice to kind of be called to interpret yourself. So I don't know. It was a good book. I think I rated it 3 or 4 stars out of 5. Yeah. So yeah, it was a good read. There's also a TV show with like 4 seasons or something on Netflix based on it. I don't think it follows the plot at all, or conspicuous lack of plot from the book. I think it's like in the same universe, but it's like totally separate. Anyways, I don't really know too much about it. But yeah, interesting ending. Very philosophical, Man in the High Castle. So yeah, I'd recommend it, but maybe not my favorite of what I've read of his so far. I think Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was a bit better of a book. But different, hard to compare, maybe. Anyways, I'm gonna finish this Frosty. It's almost already melted, so yeah, see you next week.